Hello everyone, this is Grace. It is December the 9th, 2021, and we are going to be taking another look at the patterns of sevens in the Revelation. And we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is the new chart that I came up with, and it looks a little bit daunting, but no worries. We're going to go through it step by step. Well, before we get started on the patterns, let me tell you that the reason why I divided up the fifth and the sixth items in each sequence is because if you recall in one of the previous videos, I mentioned that I had a misunderstanding of the 11th hour church and when it began and when it ended. And so I figured that out. And once I figured it out, it revealed another pattern that was in the sevens. And that's why I had to divide these up in order to establish that pattern that revealed. So let's look at that first. So let's go to Revelation 11. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the God of heaven. So the remnant here is the 11th hour church. This is the 11th hour church. And then we continued on in the previous video. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. This is just anointed, his anointed. And he shall reign forever and ever. Well, I found a parallel passage for this in Revelation 12. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to Revelation 12. We're going to read from the beginning in Revelation 12 because we want to see what happens before we reach this passage. We want to see what happens at the establishment of the 11th hour church. So let's go ahead and just start from the beginning. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and he cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. This is the creation of the 144,000. This is the birth of the church. We saw the establishment of, we saw Jesus coming into his authority under the fifth, under Revelation 5. And he is being given authority of the first group of the 144,000, thereby establishing the church. So that's why it's saying she's giving birth, because she's really giving birth to the church. We talked about this before, but I'm just repeating it briefly for the newer people. So the child, the 144,000, are caught up to God and his throne. This is the remnant here. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared for God, that they should feed her 1,203 days. This is the symbolism for prophecy. Whenever we see someone that's going to be prophesying, we see the 1,203 days. So they're going to go into wilderness, but they're going to be testifying and witnessing and prophesying for the people and the masses. And there was war in heaven. We don't need that part. Here's the parallel passage. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Now, if you're familiar with Revelation 12, and we've gone through Revelation 12 many times, you know that this is not the end. There's a whole lot more that this church is going to do after this verse. Yet we have the 11th hour church being created up here. This parallel verse after the seventh trumpet has been blown, and then the 11th hour church continues their work afterwards. Let's take a look at it. Let me read this for you again so that you can see they're the same. And there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our God and of his anointed, and he shall reign forever and ever. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. It's just establishing the church of God. That's what it's saying. So let's look at Revelation 12 and let's see what happens afterwards. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that... I'm sorry, this verse seems so familiar. I'm sure there's a parallel passage somewhere. I just can't think of it right now, but it distracted me for a moment. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell on them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times, and half a times from the face of the serpent. Well, we know where this comes from. This comes almost directly from Daniel. She's nourished for a time, times, and half a times from the face of the serpent. And this is the same time period. If we go to Daniel, let me mark this. It's during the same time, so there's no reason why I feel like it's probably the exact same time. Hold on. And one said unto the man clothed in linen, and one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. We know that the scattering happens to Levi and one of the other brothers, as dictated in Genesis 49, when Jacob is prophesying about his 12 sons, his descendants. That Levi is going to be scattered. And we also know that the scattering happens under Revelation chapter 11 and 8. Those are the same prophecies. If you're not aware of that, then you want to check out the video called Daniel 11:23. Consider the vision. Okay, that explains that they're the same prophecies. So they're scattered in Daniel 11 and 8. And then here at the very beginning, you see the people being gathered. So there's a lot that's being done for the seventh church, for the 11th hour church, after the seventh trumpet has already blown. Let's go back. Okay. where they are nourished for a times and a half a times from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Here's another parallel passage. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. I want that pink. Hold on. And this verse, if you recall, is just like Daniel 11. It's in Revelation 14. And right after they give out the loud cry, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus Christ. I already got it highlighted for us. So, and then right after that is the time of restoration. So they go all the way through the sixth. So the 11th hour church it begins under the sixth trumpet, under the latter half of the sixth trumpet, and it continues on into and beyond the seventh trumpet. Okay, so let's now look at the patterns. I want to explain it to you because this is going to be a little bit hard to follow. Well, I'll go through just the first one with you so that you'll be able to follow along as we go through step by step. So you have the first four, which are created, no problem, all right? They're just in sequence. There you go. And then you have the first part of the fifth church. You have the first part of the fifth in sequence. And then you have a second part. These are going to be related. They're going to be one event that is going to have a beginning and an ending, and they're going to serve two distinct purposes. And they're going to have different components, but they're all going to be circled around one event. Then you get to the sixth, and the sixth are just, it's a first and a second. They're all under the sixth sequence, but they're completely different events. They may be related in some way, but they're distinct as well. They're very distinct. Not like the fifth and the sixth. They're the same. They pull off of one event, and you have the beginning and you have the end of that same event, which are distinct. So, and then you have the seventh. And the fifth, the first part of this, like you have the beginning, you have the end. The beginning actually starts under the end of the sixth, starts under the second portion of the sixth in sequence. And then the ending of the fifth, this seems a little more complicated than what it actually is. The ending begins under the seventh, and the seventh rolls through. One other thing I want to point out, I had to separate these two, not because of the distinction. We could have just grouped them all together. I had to separate them because the first part, it stops right before the seventh. Let's just say, we'll go to the trumpet. The first part is going to stop right before the seventh trumpet is blown. And then it's going to pick up again at the very end. It jumps past the seventh trumpet, and it picks up at the end of time. It just does it. That's what it does. We'll see. We're going to go step by step so you'll see for yourself. So we don't know about the first four churches. We do know, because these two events are tied together, that this had to be during the time of the Millerite movement. How do we know that? Because we know that the Church of Philadelphia was during Sister White's time. The Millerite movement came. I don't know what happened at the beginning. I don't know what the first part of it was, but we know that the Great Disappointment is what directly led to the Church of Philadelphia. Those that were left after the movement got together, and that is what's established the Church of Philadelphia. So the Church of Philadelphia went on to establish the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And now that's going to move on to the chosen people of today. Okay? So, and I should have put seals there. I should have put seals, but I don't want to change it right now. We'll just continue on. So we have the first 4 seals. And we have the first 4 is kind of simple. It's just the horses that are running. Then when you reach the first part, the 5th is going to be the judgment, right? So the judgment begins under the 5th seal. No, the judgment of the dead, it's going to begin, it's already begun, but it's going to end. It begins for the wicked, but it's going to end. I don't know if I can say it begins under the 5th seal. Let's leave it for now. I'll think about it as we work. I'll try to anyway. The righteous, they begin the judgment, and then at the end, the righteous are rewarded. And the transfer of authority begins to Jesus for the 144,000. This may be something else, but I can't think about it while I'm talking. You can fix it on your own if you have to, or I'll tell you later on if I figure out something different. So then you get to, but it has to have something to do with the reward that's given to the righteous or the judgment. No, it has to have something to do with the judgment, because you see the closing out of the judgment of the dead, which directly leads you into the 6th seal, which is the judgment of the living. Now, the judgment of the living, you don't see anything happening there because it's going to be postponed in the very next part of the judgment in Revelation chapter 7. So you see the creation of the 144,000 and the postponing of anything happening as far as this judgment is concerned until after the 144,000 are sealed. So then you go on to the trumpets. Incidentally, I forgot to mention it. If you see up here, I did mention it. The first part of the 5th happens during the second part of the 6th in the previous sequence. So during the churches, the SDA is going to be the SDA now, because it's led into the SDA. You will see the beginning of the judgment. That's when the judgment began. So here we have the creation of the 144,000. That immediately they're gonna start stealing the 144,000. Okay. The warnings of the first 4 trumpets, those are just warnings. Those are fairly simple. It jumps us into the current, which is the sealing of the 144,000. And then after the sealing of the 144,000, that comes with the 5 months of woe. They're directly related. Some are sealed with the seal of God. Others are sealed for Satan. So then this leads us into now the plagues can be released. Okay. So seals 1 and 2 are released during this time. The 144,000 are taken up. Seals 3 and 4 are going to jump to the end. Here, same thing. This is postponed until after the sealing. And this stops right before the 7th, and jumps past the 7th to the ending. 3 and 4 is going to jump to the end. Creation of the 11th church is the second part of the trumpets, which we just went over. The remnant are the 7th church, the 11th hour church, The remnant are the 11th hour church. They'll be prophesying and witnessing, as we saw right away probably. We saw that in Revelation 12. And then afterwards we have the opening of the vials. So we're going to jump down. We have the plagues on the people in the land. That's 1 through 4. We're going to jump down to the current. Current is going to be the curse on the church leaders. This is happening simultaneously with the creation of the 11th hour church from the remnant. The curse, let's look at it. We didn't look at anything. Oh, I hope you guys are following this. We'll go over it real quick, just in case you didn't. Okay, so we have, oh man, I can't believe we didn't look at anything. So we have the Church of Philadelphia that leads into the SDA church, and then to the Church of Laodicea. While the Philadelphia church is around, we are going to open up the seal. The seals have already been running in the past. They're looking back at them, and it's going to take us to the current event, which is the 5th seal, which is the judgment. This is the closing of the judgment, and the righteous are going to be rewarded. The righteous are being rewarded, and they're told to wait, because this is completing up. It's the judgment of the dead. This completes, it leads you directly into the 6th seal. The 6th seal has 2 parts, and it's in 2 chapters. We have the first part where they see the wrath of the Lamb about to come upon them. And then the second part, which is the creation of the 144,000. And the wrath is they're told to wait, hold off on the wrath, don't do anything until after the 144,000 is sealed. This is the second part of the 6th seal. If we jump forward, then we skip all of this, which is all happening in the past. These are warnings that have been given, the first 4 trumpets. And what's currently going on is the 5th. So it jumps us from the holding of the wrath to the sealing of the 144,000. So the 144,000 are sealed. That's the first part. The second part is the woe that comes upon those that aren't sealed. And then that takes us to the 6th angel sounding. I think that's where we left off. So the 6th angel sound, no, that's not where we left off. So the 6th angel sounds, and the trumpets, the warnings that were given, they can now be, the wrath that was about to fall upon the people can now be set free. So you see the setting free of the winds of strife upon the people. And the first 2 are released upon the people, and those are fulfilled. And as a result, after that, the 144,000 are taken up, and the creation of the 11th hour church in the remnant is established. And immediately after that, you have the 7th angel sounding. Now it's the 11th hour church's turn to work. So let's continue on. Let me say this before we continue. If you've been following along, you know that I have not yet started really the 5th vial. So everything I put here is just, I read through it, I came up with what I thought it was, because that's the way we have to study. Otherwise, I'd have to learn the entire Bible before I could do a study. I have to be able to correct myself. And you, being the good Bereans that you are, you'll take the information and you'll do your own research. Because I'm telling you right now, I haven't studied any of this. I looked at it, I read through it, I came up with what I thought it was. I'll even go through it with you so that you can see how I came up with it. I have no problem with that. And we have a little bit of time, so that's fine. But just understand that this is going to be corrected as we go through this study together. This is just what I did a brief reading, and that's what I came up with. So we'll go there and we'll take a look at it together. Okay, so, but first let's look at it like this. So plagues 1 through 4 are on the people in the land. Those are pretty forward, pretty clear. So then you have the curse on the church and its leaders, and the curse is a curse of darkness. This is going to happen, remember, at the same time as this, at the creation of the 11th hour church. So let's take a look at the curse real quick. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast. The seat of the beast are the leaders. So it's going to come upon the leaders of the church and his kingdom. I don't really want to mark this up because we're studying this. I'll unmark it later. And the fifth angel poured out his veil upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness. So it's a curse. They're full of darkness. This is the great blindness or deception. I can't remember the wording that's in the Bible. I can't remember it, but it's in Revelation 13, I think. Well, let me correct that now, because I originally corrected myself and I said it wasn't it didn't start at Revelation 13 because I remembered, because I didn't have a proper understanding of the 11th hour church and how it functioned. I can't recall why, but anyway, it does start at the beginning of the 11th hour church, and then the prophets come along, and it ends after the seventh trumpet. Revelation 13 has two parts. It has two components. So the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, upon the leaders, and his kingdom was full of darkness. They didn't know God, and they gnawed their tongues for pain because of the curses, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of the pains of their their sores, and repented not of their deeds. They blasphemed the God of heaven. We've already went over this blasphemy. They claim to be able to fulfill sins. You'll want to see the video on 666. See the playlist, because there's two different sets of videos and they have different information in them. And then if you want to know if you don't understand what I'm saying, then check out that playlist. So I have that here. The curse is on the church leaders, the seed of the beast, and they're left in darkness. Because of that, they claim to be able to forgive sins, and they blaspheme God. So then that takes us, these are directly related, that takes us to the sixth vial. And I put a plague on those that take the mark. I used the river Euphrates for that reference. I'll explain that in a moment. And then the law of Sunday worship by penalty of death, and I used the war reference for that. Let's take a look. So here's the sixth angel. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. I did not look up the river Euphrates. I read through this. And the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Now, we know that water is people. So I know that the river Euphrates has to be given as a group of people. I don't know who it is. So let's keep reading. It says they're dried up. So that's a bad thing. In the end, it's not going to be a good thing. And I think that the kings of the east, because it keeps referring to the people of the coming from the east as Jesus. So the kings of the east is Jesus and his saints, the 144,000. Or it's the people of God. It doesn't matter. We don't have to know that right now. But this is the unrighteous, and this is the righteous. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. So here, I couldn't think of anything that would explain unclean spirits off the top of my head, but I do know what frogs are. And frogs have tongues that come out of their mouth and kill people. Well, mouth in the Bible is words. So out of the mouth of the dragon And out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet comes words that kill people, just as the tongue comes out of the mouth of the frog. That's my discernment there. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth to the kings of the earth and to the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Well, what does this mean? So there is a parallel verse in Revelation 19. Let's go there. Oh, I messed up. Okay, let me mark this. Mark this first, and then we're going to go back. We're going to do a split screen. Okay. All right, so we have the angel standing in the sun here, which is the same as the fourth angel. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourself together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat of the flesh of kings and of the flesh. It skips the fifth one, and it goes right into the war. It says that ye may eat the flesh of kings and the flesh of captains and the flesh of mighty men and the flesh of horses and of them that sit on them and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So this is where I got the war. It was from the parallel passages to this. First, he was standing in the sun, and then the darkness led to them declaring war, basically. And by that, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And that's the war. That's the way I saw it, okay? And then, of course, the judgment. And he gathered them together into a place called the Hebrew tongue, called Armageddon. So, making war. How do you make war on God? So they've taken the mark. They've made the leaders said they could forgive sins. Because they said they could forgive sins, this led directly to them claiming to be God, basically, and making Sunday the legal Sabbath. But that's not good enough for them to keep Sunday. No, they have to break the Saturday Sabbath because the plagues are still falling. So they make war on God. Well, how do you make war on God? You're just going to wave your fist up in the air and say, oh, I'm so mad at you today. No. You say, okay, well, if you serve God, we tried to be nice to you. We told you, first they said, look, you can't sit at our table. And then they said, okay, well, you can't play on our playground. But now they're saying, no, you just got to go. You can't be here at all. So they make a law saying they're going to kill off all the saints. That's making war with God. Or logically speaking. That's just my logic for now. We'll know more as we go along. So the fifth starts here. Then it goes on to the last part of the fifth. It goes on to the first part of the sixth. The second part of the sixth, which leads directly into the seventh, this right here, the plague on those that take the mark. It's the Sunday law, the creation of the Sunday law, basically, and the plague on them that take the mark. I should have just put creation of Sunday law, but I didn't think of it. That's going to jump to the 7th along with all of the rest of these. The 144,000. What's 6-1 here? The Judgment and the Church of Philadelphia. All of those meet up along with the 7th under the 7th vial. And the 7th vial, we've already gone over this slightly, is a plague on Satan and his angels, and that of course is the end of the book, so we can't go any further than that. Well, we can, because we know what happens afterwards, but we don't need that for this study. We're just looking at the patterns. All right, so they all meet up in the 7th along with the first part of each of the 6 that are in the sequence. I think that's a wrap, everyone. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. I'll see you in the next video.